So I was sitting there and I remember it was about algebra and I raised my hand and I asked about what X equals. And she said, see, Greg, that's why you're going to end up flipping burgers for the rest of your life. And I'm like, because I don't know what X equals. And I remember thinking in that moment how she made me feel, not as a student, but as a person.
This is the Mostly Middle Tennessee Business Podcast, a podcast about Middle Tennessee business owners and professionals.
Yeah.
Mostly.
Yes. As always, thank you, Mr. Matt Wilson, for the voice intro. Check his podcast out at the Mostly Marketing Podcast. He's actually putting out episodes again. I strongly suggest you go check those out. This is the Mostly Middle Tennessee Business Podcast, powered by Muletown Bikes. Down on the square in Columbia, go see Vinny. Especially now, they've got after this episode comes out, they're going to be having Christmas specials, but I was going to talk about like the Black Friday specials, which quite possibly might still be going on. Either way, Christmas specials, if you want to get an e-bike or a bike for that loved one, and they've been clamoring for it, you should. I've been riding an e-bike as of late, an Aventon, and, somewhat losing weight, just got to dial in the dietary thing. This is also coming from the Christian Brothers of Spring Hill Studios. Just had lunch with Jason Miller yesterday, and he's got a lot of cool things going on over there, helping people out. He's got a full lot of a lot of things going on in life as well as his business, so check those guys out as well. And today, we're kind of reaching back to somebody that I had on a previous podcast. If you're concerned or you have a lot of thoughts about modern education, the state of education in America, grade school education, college, things of that nature, this will be a great episode for you to listen to. We have a returning guest, Mr. Greg Svihlik.
Very good.
Yeah, I got it right?
You did. I don't even know how you say my last name because I've heard it so many different ways.
Right.
Maybe I'm saying it wrong. I don't know. But yeah, Svihlik.
Svihlik,
so, yeah. You nailed it.
Bring that mic a little bit closer. We want to hear you.
Yeah,
get right up on that thing.
Not good?
There you go. So, yeah, we talked the last time. I was taken by, we had a parent-teacher night, and I got introduced to you from my first child going through one of your classes. And you just kind of really impressed me because you were speaking my language. You were saying a lot of the things that I think a lot of people are thinking. You're just probably early in the thought process with a lot of the concepts that you believe in. I remember one of the things that you had said, even on that podcast, was that, look, I'm not here to make, new or little historians because you taught history. I'm trying to get these kids to think about how they're going to digest and input information. And how do they process it and things of that nature. You're going to be like, I have a feeling you're just going to have a lot of students that are going to remember you because we all have those teachers that we remember that are good and bad. Yeah. The ones that are kind of in the middle, we don't really remember. We remember the bad ones.
Right.
We remember the really good ones. So I think you're going to be on the really good side.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I always hope that there's more people that can look back on having me as a teacher and say, you know what, they made a positive impact. There are going to be some I might not have been able to reach, and that does bother me. There could be 100 people that say, yeah, that was a nice guy. And if there's 2, it's like I should have done something more to help them. So right. I try my best.
You try your best. It's all you can do, when it comes to that kind of a thing. And, but a lot of it's seed planting, metaphorically, of course. But I mean, a lot of these things that you kind of instill. I mean, even you have my third daughter now as a student. She raves about you. She's one of her favorite teachers.
I appreciate
so congratulations. So getting into all the different things, you've been a teacher for going on 16 plus years. A majority of those within the Williamson County school system here in Middle Tennessee. Mm-hmm. And a lot of you were like, well, what does this have to do with business? Guys, teaching is a business. Okay. The school system is a business. And, there's a lot of different things that it's a business in flux too, I would think. Mm-hmm. A lot of different changes happening. Is that what you're seeing?
Yeah, I think what's nice about like living in America, you have all these different states and states are doing their own thing, which I think is fantastic. Mm-hmm. I think one of the major shifts they once had was when they had Common Core, right? And everyone was trying to get on the same page. I think I saw the strengths of that. There are weaknesses of that. But I think what's great about having America is you have all these states who are doing their own thing, so I think by having that, you can say, oh, look at this state. They're doing this very well. This state's doing this very well. And you kind of borrow ideas, and like as a country, we just try to move forward and try and identify what are the best practices. I think in anything from athletics to education to business to life in general, it's a pendulum where people will jump on the pendulum and all that momentum shifts one way until you just beat it down. And then people want to go back to the basics and the pendulum swings the other way. And it's just constantly moving, I think.
Right.
And education is definitely one of those pendulums.
Have you seen that in your career, that pendulum swing?
I have.
Yeah.
I have, because I'm probably on the side now where I was in the middle of one pendulum that was happening. There were test retakes, test corrections, giving them multiple attempts. And the idea is, you don't care how many times it takes them, as long as they understand the concept. But then I think with education in particular, when you look at that and students know I have as many safety nets as there's going to be, then what's your motivation to try hard the first time?
Right.
If there's no risk to fail and to actually fail, then there's no
consequences.
No right. Yeah. No consequences. So now I think they scaled that back where they said, okay, we're not going to retake every test. You get one test per quarter.
Yeah.
And I think that it's a complete dynamic. And one of the big things I try to, all students are different. All people are different. I think something I try to get with many of my students are, you need to get yourself to a point where there are no test retakes. Mm-hmm. You go and you work hard and you crush it and you teach yourself how to learn and how to retain information so that you don't need a test retake because you did it right the first time. And that's where I hope the kids can get to. And I think many of them do. Well,
it's still the old model of testing and how do you retain information, and is it information recall? Is it really an intrinsic tactile understanding? I don't know if tactile is the right word, but intrinsic, I guess, understanding of the subject matter. I mean, because it's the old adage, if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it's going to think it's a failure all of its life.
Yeah, right.
All these kids are so different, and one of the things that I think I've shared with you in the previous podcast from years ago, I've never told my kids that, hey, if you don't get a college education, you're going to be a failure. Because, that was generally the message told to me and my generation growing up. Because, college did provide an edge. And there was such a push for the white-collar jobs. Blue-collar was looked down upon. And, I've become such a huge proponent of blue-collar trade school jobs.
Absolutely. I feel, actually, it saddens me and angers me, because when you look at when things go south, when the economy goes down, it's not your blue collar workers that are losing jobs a lot of times, because toilets need to be fixed, cars need to be fixed, right? Roofs need to be repaired, and
AI robots need to be built.
Yeah, you're right. And it's funny. It's funny though, because my brothers, my friends and I, we were just talking about this. We always talk about this. Will you get to a point where AI will replace the people?
Right.
And
it's already happening.
Yeah, it's happening. I think that the government will try and slow it down, because you can't have just all these unemployed people.
Right.
So I think there needs to always be a skill set of people who can build things. But like in the factories, you got machines that are building other machines now.
Yep.
And it is a scary thought. But, I think back to what you were saying about college, my parents, I think, were surprised I went to college. And I would not have gone to college. Like, the only reason I wanted to go to college was to be a teacher.
Is that what you really wanted to do?
100%.
Okay. Nothing else was in mind. Professional wrestler?
Rule the world, maybe. I don't know. I love baseball, professional baseball. But I think, deep down, it's like, do I have what it takes? And the answer was no. And I could see that. Mm-hmm. And I didn't always make the best choices.
Who did?
Yeah, right. So when I look back, I'm like, I probably should have focused on this more. And we all do that. That's just the maturity process. But when I look at me, when I was in 4th grade, 3rd grade, I remember being a student thinking, oh, this would be a cool assignment. Oh, we should do this. And I was not a great student.
Right.
Like, I'm honest with my students.
I was about to say, did you tell them the story?
Yeah. I am very honest with my students. And I think what teachers sometimes lack, and there are so many better teachers than me, but I think that's something that I wish I can explain to a lot of teachers, are when you look at who's in your classroom, Number one, you're looking at people.
Mm-hmm.
Number two, you're looking at kids. Number three, you're looking at students. I think first you have to identify that they're people and they're learning, they're listening, they're inquisitive. So I think when you identify them first as people before students, like, because I think when you look at the students, like, oh, my job is just to teach information.
Right.
No, man, we're trying to help guide them, onto the next level. And so when I talk to the students, I'm very honest about where I struggle. I had lots of Fs. Mm-hmm. My first F I ever got was in theology. I went to a private school, and I remember I got an F, and there was my mom and my dad. My mom put emphasis on grades. Mm-hmm. My dad would see if there were any check marks on the back. Mm-hmm. Check marks were not good. Oh, puts an effort, practices, gets along with others, whatever it might be. If you had check marks, that was a problem. So my dad would flip it over. No check marks, you were good. And then my mom would open up the report card. But I remember I got an F in theology. I think it was in 7th grade. My mom's yelling at me like, well, how can you do this, right? Like, I don't even remember taking theology. And my dad was reading the newspaper in the kitchen, and he puts it down and says, well, I guess that's probably why you failed. And just kept going back to reading the newspaper. And I always thought about that. So I do tell students that I struggled partly because I was a bad student. It wasn't intelligence.
Right.
Stubbornness of, okay, why do I have to do 100 problems when I just did it right 5 times?
Right.
I don't get that. Why would I do this worksheet when I already know it? Right. So there was that stubbornness, but then I got to a point, the stubbornness hurt me because then I got to the point with math, like I couldn't do the math because I wasn't doing the 100 problems maybe,
As a practice, I guess.
Yeah. No. So, I'm always honest with my students about how I did in education, but I always wanted to be a teacher. And you were talking about, you remember the good teachers and the bad teachers. You don't remember the mid teachers. One of the major reasons I wanted to be a teacher, and the kids will ask me this and I'll tell them the story. And I remember the teacher's name. I was in 7th grade math and I was sitting in the front row where all the great students either sit or you're forced to sit because you're goofing around with your friends in the back. Mm-hmm. I was that latter one. So I was sitting there and I remember it was about algebra and I raised my hand and I asked about what X equals. And she said, see, Greg, that's why you're going to end up flipping burgers for the rest of your life. And I'm like, because I don't know what X equals. Mm-hmm. And she said something and I said something. I got kicked out of class. Mm-hmm. And I remember thinking in that moment how she made me feel, not as a student, but as a person.
Right.
And I remember I asked her, I said, well, who are you questioning how somebody makes a living? And then that's what kind of got me thrown out. But I remember sitting in the hallway, feeling embarrassed, feeling bad about myself, feeling angry. And then a little bit of like,
but man,
I'll show her.
But the funny thing is you weren't even aware of how good of questions you were asking.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. I was probably like the annoying, like, just stop asking questions.
You were still like, there's like an element of an old soul that is in you that just knows, well, the logical aspect of this. Well, how does that reflect on, or even passing judgment as what if I chose to be a burger flipper?
Yeah.
What if it's something that's what I'm meant to do? What if this is something that just makes my soul sing?
Yeah.
Okay. So you're judging that. And then of course the child side of it is like, well, I've just been called out and made an example of, which nobody likes. Yeah.
And I remember thinking like, I would never make a student feel that way. And honestly, to this day, I always reflect and I am honest, sometimes to a fault, where if a kid does something, I will call them out. Mm-hmm. And there are times that I might make that student feel bad. I might make that person feel bad. And I tell them at the beginning of the year, like, this is my personality. I am straightforward. I'm trying to get results. Mm-hmm. The end game is get results, right? And I tell them, if I ever say something to you that hurts, that stings, and if I ever embarrass you, I need you to come up and tell me, you've really made me embarrassed. And I will apologize in front of the students and say, I did something stupid. I apologize for doing that. And I think, again, people sometimes look at teacher-student relationship rather than person-to-person relationship.
Right.
So I have had a student come up to me and say that, and I apologized, and I tell them it's never out of anger. It's never out of hate. Mm-hmm. It's out of love. I'm being direct with you. I'm being honest with you because the only way we can get to where we need to get to as quickly as we can is if we cut through all the extra stuff and we just get down to it.
I am Vinny Tavares. I'm the owner of Milltown Bikes. right in the heart of Columbia, Tennessee on the square. And we're here to serve the community. We have bicycles from kids to adults, e-bikes, mountain bikes, road bikes. We run a repair shop. So I am the third generation of this current bike shop. It's been here since the 70s. It's a historical building. It's an integral part of the downtown community in Columbia. We got customers here coming in and talking that they got their very first bike here. So the reception has been great. Everybody's been super friendly, super welcoming. A lot of the old customers that been coming here for generations now still come here. They're now my customers, and I have a huge responsibility to continue to carry that legacy and that passion forward.
Hi, I'm Jason Miller. I'm the owner of Christian Brothers Automotive here in Spring Hill, Tennessee. We fix cars here, both European and domestic, from simple oil changes to complete engine rebuilds and replacements. Most important thing, though, is while you're waiting, we've got the best snack game in town, and we invite you to make yourself at home and get to know us, and we treat you like family. We're located right across the street from Walmart on Highway 31 right here in Spring Hill. Let us know that you heard about us on this ad, and we'll give you 10% off your next oil change. So stop on in and see us in downtown Spring Hill. Do we even have a downtown in Spring Hill?
Well, you're talking about relationships, the true nature of them, and that's what it takes. One of the things that I'm proud that my kids will never see me do is be hesitant to apologize. I mean, I can't even, more than on my fingers that I've apologized to them, count the times. They've seen me apologize when I've gone off, flipped out, flew off the handle, all the things, even when it wasn't directed at them, because I have a little bit of a temper issue when it comes to technology and small things that just needle at you, like computer issues that you're in the middle of a project and all of a sudden the whole thing like, oh, we're just going to stop, and blue screen of death pops up, and friggin' rage monster veins start popping out. And when those things happen and I so sadly do it in front of my family and I feel like a dumbass afterwards, I apologize for that.
Oh, yeah.
And they're like, oh, no, it's okay. I'm like, no, it's not. You need to know and hear it from me. It's not okay. And I'm trying to fix it and I'm trying to be better. But, hey, at least Dad's not perfect. And I'm willing to admit it. You know what I mean? They would always see me work as well. Like no matter what, I'm not slacking off. Mm-hmm. If I am, I'm with their mom, hanging out, holding their hand.
Yeah, building a relationship.
Right. And those are the things that are caught, not taught. Mm-hmm. And a lot of what you're doing is it's what they're catching, not what you're teaching them. So I commend you for that, man. That's amazing.
I appreciate it. It's so I've got a 6-year-old and a 4-year-old. Mm-hmm. And that is my biggest fear of, you have to sit down. Oh, I'm gonna be a good dad. I'm gonna teach them something right now.
Right.
But then they're also learning when I stub my toe on the end table and the reaction and the words and all that stuff come on. And then you go up and you say, hey, I apologize. I shouldn't have said this or done that. And that's my biggest fear of that when I'm not in front of them and they can hear me, or when I don't think they're watching, am I setting that example? Yeah. And we were talking, you and I were talking about kind of the pendulum swinging and all that stuff. And I think that a lot of times when you look at education, especially in Middle Tennessee, because we were talking about hard work. Mm-hmm. And then we talked about my 7th grade teacher questioning, well, that's why you'll flip burgers.
Right.
I think that I feel like one of my least favorite quotes of all time is whoever said, work smarter, not harder. Mm-hmm. That phrase drives me absolutely crazy. Because I feel like what that does, it allows people to try and find the easiest escape route to not work hard. Mm-hmm. You can do both, right? Work hard in finding an easy avenue, sure, whatever. But that I feel like we've allowed easiness, right, to just kind of take over a lot of things.
I think actually they complement each other. Those two concepts really complement each other. If you take them to, I guess, another second or third level of that progression, because if you work smart in terms of finding out, and again, this is something I expressed to my kids since before they could remember, I don't care if you go to college. I really don't. I want you to find out who you are. After high school, if you have an ability to go to college and on someone else's dime and it's not coming out, you're not having to take out loans that you'll never get out from under. Awesome. Okay. Understand you're there for networking.
Yeah.
And just, if it's easy, get the grades. Okay. Just then do your thing, hang out for 4 years. If it's easy peasy, great, but create the relationships and the networking. That's one of the biggest advantages you'll have coming out of college, but you still don't need it, especially in this day and age. You could still make a good living finding out what and understand that, hey, after high school, getting into your 20s, those are the years you have to fall on your face.
Yes.
You have to fail. You have to eat dirt. That's how you figure yourself out. That's a big part of it. Dare I say, calling it building character. That's the smarter aspect of it. Because once you do find your element, the hard work doesn't feel like hard work.
No, and I the best lesson, one of the best lessons I've ever heard, the best lessons I got were never in a classroom. Right. It's when you're sitting there, you're talking to a stranger, or you're sitting there with a parent, whatever it might be. And I remember my dad, he worked a lot. We were a very blue collar family.
Right.
And there would be days I wouldn't see my dad because he was a police officer, and he would sleep on the floor of the police officer, working from this job to this job to this job, so that we could play sports, or so that we could have a nice Christmas, whatever have you. And I do remember there were times I would open up the cabinet, and I remember there'd be a box of minute rice and a sleeve of crackers, and that was it. And I'd ask my mom, like, "Hey, when are we going to go to the store?" Not realizing, my dad's sleeping on the floor, going job to job, so that I could play baseball.
Right.
So my brothers can play hockey, whatever have you. But I remember my dad said, whatever you do in life, you make sure that you laugh every day, because you will be at work all the time, right? Sometimes more than with your family, which is sad. But, by the time I get home from teaching and coaching, let's say it's 5:00, my kids go to bed at 8:00. I see them for 3 hours, right? Now you have the weekends, but no. So I think whenever you can laugh every day, and I tell the students, like, every day I go in there, I'm either laughing with you or at you, but no matter what, I'm laughing. And I think, like, to your point, it doesn't feel like work. It doesn't. Like, for teaching, I'm not, like, I can't imagine the idea of, like, counting down the days until I retire, because I enjoy it.
Right. Like,
every day, like, there's things that drive me crazy in the education world, but I love it every day, and it's rewarding. It's
do you have peers that are like that, though?
Yeah, they're old. Yeah. I'm a young buck still, right?
Right.
No, but I think teaching is a profession that you get burned out in.
I would imagine, especially now.
And I don't think it's the teacher's fault. I think that people go into teaching because they really enjoy it. They want
to feel like they're giving back. They're helping. They're having a hand in creating the next generation. Yeah. I get all that, but when you have the systems that are in place that reward they're very top heavy, if you will, and it's like, okay, guys. I had a conversation on this podcast probably about 2 years, maybe 2.5, 3 years ago now, with Dr. Grant Bell. He's a principal up at Springfield Middle School, which is now, he's really taken that culture and done amazing things with it. That's probably a key word as well. Within the ecosystem he had, and within the control that he had, he created a culture of teachers that could see past the paycheck. Yeah. And they could see, the why of what they were doing. And he created a magnet school. I mean, it was a school where parents requested their kids not go to. If they got assigned to it, they're like, "Oh no, let's get him out of here." And then he went into that thinking, we need to turn this around. It took him some time, and he had to get a lot of his staff on board, which is a tough part. Yeah. But that's part of leading, and that's what he did. But that's a lot of what he kind of brought to the table was, and he was it still is a positive influence on that school. I told him, I said, "Look, man, I applaud everything you're doing. I think it's awesome." I said, "But are you guys seeing the wave that's coming towards your industry?" He goes, "What's that?" I said, "There are people that don't want to get into it anymore."
Yeah.
A resume shortage, if you will. Why there's not many people being inspired to get into the profession of teaching anymore, because it's headache city.
Yeah.
For what?
I think for the what, I can answer the what. For me, and the students ask why. for me, the meaning of life is to make a positive difference on at least one person's life, just one. And that's a successful life. And when you look at education, I have 115 students this year, 115 next year. So if I go through, let's say I teach for 40 years, right? I'd be surprised if I did, but 40 years. Mm-hmm. That's 40 people if it was one a year.
Yeah.
And if you did half that, you're still making an impact on 20 people.
Right.
So I think my why anyway is my goal is to make a positive difference in somebody's life. I don't care if it's about education. I can tell you right now, when it comes to state standards, that is so low on my totem pole of things I care about, of my students learning state standards. It's like the last thing I can think of. And there's so much more. So I think my why is there. Why people aren't getting into it though is, I think when you look at education, okay, you have a boss. Everyone has a boss.
Right.
And then you have a county, but then you've got parents. And then in the end, I remember the only time you saw grades was when you brought home a report card and then those are your grades. Mm-hmm. But now with Skyward and you have these programs where parents can constantly manage and watch. And it's not in any way a bad parent, but you've said it when I met the parents, I say, you've got to let your kids go. Mm-hmm. It doesn't make you bad. I understand you want the best for them, but you've got to let them fail because the only way we succeed is when we fail. That's it.
Being uncomfortable.
Yeah. You have to, right? Mm-hmm. Like if I'm a baseball player and I hit home runs all the time on a fastball and a curveball I'm not good at, I've got to try and improve on a curveball, right? So I think that now you have your bosses and the county bosses and parents who are constantly able to email and they want more and more. And then the answer a lot of times isn't, you don't go to teachers and say, well, how can we help you? And I think a lot of people will go to the teachers saying, well, hey, you need to do this. You need to fix this. While teachers are running a million miles an hour trying to do their job and then wanting somebody telling them, and then you got to do more and more and more.
Right.
And I'll tell you right now, I do not know a teacher. I do not know one teacher who does not like being in the classroom with kids. Mm-hmm. It is what we do. It is what we love. Now, when it gets to the education aspect of, well, you have to do this, this, and this, I think that's where teachers start to feel the pressure and really kind of break down.
Do you think that, because a lot of teachers now that are in the profession, there's an element of leverage that happens. Like, look, we know that there's a shortage of staff that's coming on board, which gives us a tremendous amount of leverage. Does it empower you to speak your mind to the higher ups more so? Because in a typical situation where you have an onslaught of talent coming in, if you will, you don't want to rock the boat because you don't want to lose your job. Chances of that happening, come on, at this point, right?
So are you asking me or are you asking teachers?
Well, no, because you're
because me, the answer is yes. I speak up. Yeah. I've got no problem because, again, if I'm coming from like heartfelt sincerity, if I'm saying like this is what not only what I think, but this is what I feel. Yeah, I'm not going to turn away to that. And I've had principals where I've told them like, hey, I disagree, but you're the boss. If you think I should do that, I'll do that. But here are my reasons why I would disagree with that.
Right.
And I've had bosses who've listened to it. I've had bosses who've ignored it. But I have no problem. I have no problem kind of discussing a lot of the issues I have with education in general, because in the end, I want what's best for the kids.
Do you think maybe the educational standards of teachers are a bit too high, especially when it comes with hefty, college loans and stuff like that? You having a master's in education. That's a lot of money out of pocket.
Oh, yeah. That's why I didn't go for my master's specifically. One is, again, just because I'm a teacher, I still don't like school. Let's be clear. I still don't like doing that. I like learning on my own. Yeah. But money was an aspect of it where that's another additional cost.
Right.
Now there's the argument where, well, yeah, but you're going to be able to pay it off once you get your pay raise and all that stuff. But
what's the ROI?
Well, and my perspective is, okay, I teach and I coach. So with me coaching and teaching, in the end, there's not really that much of a difference between the masters and me coaching an extra sport.
Yeah.
So for me, it's not worth the headache of the loans and all that. And you look at most teachers, Most teachers aren't going to get their master's to improve on the theories of education.
Okay, so you don't need a master's to become just a teacher.
No.
So what if there was just a methodology through which it's based on meritocracy and performance and impact on students, even having the students review the teacher? Maybe that's taken into consideration in terms of bonuses, raises, even moving up, if you wanted to become an assistant principal on up to a principal, things of that nature. Is that something they need to kind of reassess? Well, hey, you need to spend more money to get does a master's really, is it telling in terms of performance for a teacher? Does it make you that much better?
Personally, I would say no.
Okay.
I think it goes back to our previous discussion with, and I you might want to check the step. I think only 30% of kids that go to college are in a field where they're using their degree. Right. Which means, like, I know people who don't have education degrees that can come into the classroom and teach and be effective. Right. So does the master's make them that much better? No, I don't think it does. I think, however, when you get into some of the legalities of whether it be special needs and individual lesson plans, stuff like that,
sure.
I think there's an aspect to that. Yeah. But for the theories of education, no. And the reason I feel that way is because theories are always evolving and changing, so you're riding the wave and like, well, okay, we were on this theory, but now we've got something new coming out, which means so are these old masters not valid anymore? Mm-hmm. So I think the issue you run into with paying on or rewarding through test scores or what students say, it's hard because they tried that. I think it was in Georgia, where they did it on test scores and then you had teachers cheating. Changing answers. Manipulating him. Yeah, so I think the big thing that I tell new teachers, now this is probably something that people might not want to hear from a district standpoint or from a school standpoint. I would tell a new teacher, your job, it's your standards, your topic, it's not that important. Mm-hmm. Teachers will freak out because their kid doesn't know how to carry the two or do whatever. Know who wrote the Constitution. In the end, that's not the major goal here. Because if it was that important, kids all around the world would be learning this stuff. And they're not. All you can do is think, how can I help this student grow as a human being and as a person and prepare for the next stage? I tell them, don't take your job too serious and stop worrying about test scores. And it's hard because there's pressure. We're graded as teacher by test scores. And I tell the kids, like, there's more pressure on teachers for test scores than the kids have for their test scores. Mm-hmm. They want to do well, but teachers.
Why is that? Is it for federal money?
For tenure. Okay. How many times we get observed in the classroom. That's a lot of it because they equate, the test scores are good, so it must be effective. Right. And to me, for the strategies I tried to implement in the classroom, I feel like they'll help the state scores, but I don't put a lot of weight into the test scores. And it goes back to you mentioned earlier, like, is it knowing the content? I can look at a question and I'll know if my kids are going to miss it. Even if they've mastered the content, I'll tell you if they're going to miss it because of how it's worded, if it's a multiple select. And that's a lot of, like, when you go to these professional developments and we're breaking down test scores, teachers across the board are upset because I support state tests. I do. Mm-hmm. Like, I don't think we should put a lot of weight into them, but I enjoy the game of, okay, let's see what the kids learned because I'm competitive. I enjoy seeing that. But I think when you're putting so much weight on these test scores, and I get it from a district standpoint, I get it from a school standpoint. They also want to be better than the next and all that. But we shouldn't make that the end all be all of education.
I don't know what the solution would be. I mean, I always say, well, pay them better. That make it that's a lot. What is the big reason that people don't want to get into the profession? Getting back to that, do they have an assessment in terms of what the reasoning or reasons might be?
Pay is one. And then it's
headache factor.
It's stress.
Yeah.
It's stress. That's the number one reason people walk away. And I think, people can say, yeah, but you have summers off. You're right. I do have summers off. But take a picture if you have, and this is for teachers who care about their job, which I think most of them do. Yeah. Do you have 3 children?
I do.
Okay. You have 3 children. So you're worried about 3 children. I have 114. Oh yeah. And my own 2 personal kids.
Right.
And if you think that teachers don't stay up stressing about, man, this kid makes me mad when, oh man, this kid is always doing this and this kid's doing this. And deep down, when you get through all that, it's because we care and like we want them to do well. So we have 114 kids that we care about, that we're trying to really help them, whether it be with math, science, English, or to stop getting bullied, to speak with confidence, to knowing that they're going down home to a situation that's not the best, and there's nothing we can do about that. So I think a lot of that stress comes onto it. Oh yeah, and then when you have people throwing, how are your test scores doing? Right. It's like that. Why are you throwing that at me? So I think that's part of the stress is why a lot of people don't get into it. Yeah, I'm always interested in paying teachers more though.
Yeah.
Like I got into this knowing that I wasn't going to be just bringing in the big paychecks.
Right.
So it's not like they just took money from me. I sometimes fear that if you give a lot of money, right? Oh, they should maybe make $100,000. Then what teachers are you going to get then? Are you getting people that want to make $100,000, or are you still going to get the people who simply want to help people? So I think that I'm always interested in that financial dynamic.
It is, what is the magic number? I mean, there was one time a company experimented. What were they? They were like anyway.
Was it in Japan?
No, it was here in America. There was a guy who made everybody's salaries $75,000 a year.
He took it out of his own salary, I believe.
It was his own company.
Yeah.
He made however he did it, everybody made the same. Now, for those who perform better or have, more education aspects that come into the, like, well, what about us? How is the janitor making the same as me? And I've put myself through school and I do so much more for the company and it impacts the company in a positive way. How is that fair? I don't know how that worked out, but I mean, out of that whole experiment, it was the gist of it was that $75,000 a year is a sweet spot. I'm not sure if that's the case now, but I don't know, 10 years ago.
It would be for me.
Yeah.
I'd like it.
I mean, that's, it's roughly $5,000 a month. But I mean, I don't know if that's hardly not enough to live on these days, not on one salary.
I'll tell you, and again, I like money and all that stuff. The problem here that we're running into at teachers is there is no way, it is impossible for a single teacher to be able to buy a house, to pay off loans. The only reason I've been teaching now again 15, 16 years, the only way that I was able to buy a house was because I got married and my wife already had a townhouse. Mm-hmm. Other than that, how are you supposed to save up when, I'll be honest.
Especially around here.
Yeah. I'm making, if I make, let's just say $1,500 a paycheck. Mm-hmm. How are you saving up to buy a house?
Right.
And I've been in the game for 16 years.
Yeah.
So if you're a brand new teacher, it's tough. So I think there needs to be some sort of pay increase. How do we do it? I don't know. I will say Tennessee's been great. Mm-hmm. Tennessee's been great. Williamson County's been good where they've been trying to increase it. Mm-hmm. I think starting off teachers at that high salary, I think it's interesting to see who you would get, like I said. But I do remember hearing that story and the productivity when the workers saw what the boss was doing from the leadership standpoint of taking away his own salary, right? They wanted to work for him. They wanted to show up because they said, you know what, if he's doing that for us, we will do anything for that person.
Yeah.
And I think that's the importance of having a strong leader at the helm.
Well, I mean, you have so many different layers of management in what you do, from superintendent on down, then school board, I would imagine has a big part of it. You get into the local ecosystems in the schools with the principals, assistant principals, whatever the levels are. Yeah. The principal there is basically the CEO of that particular location, correct? Mm. Or at least the regional manager, let's say. They set the tone for the culture. I would imagine that all the cultures, that's a good question. Is there a cultural dictate coming down from the top to all the schools that, hey, here's our core beliefs, not just, cliche things that we pulled off from other schools, true core beliefs. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think there is. Some might be implemented more than others, but the big swing now is trying to connect with students, trying to build those relationships, which I feel like are always there.
Yeah. That's going to happen.
Yeah. And it's funny because sometimes then you get kickback, like, I am building relationships. What more do you want me to do? So then it's like, now you're adding something else to it, which can sometimes have the adverse effect. Right. But No, I think there's a big shift in trying to, I know you're their teacher, but we also need you to be their guidance counselor. We need you to help them with their feelings. We need you to help them with this.
Psychiatrist.
Yeah, very much so. So again, I think a lot of teachers want to do that on their own, but then when it starts feeling forced, and I don't think it's negative. I think that a lot of people, they need somebody to turn to.
Yeah.
But there is that dynamic where a lot of times the schools are going that way. But, you know, it could be a great thing.
It could be, but, you know, it's like, look, you know, you're going to get the people that are hired that, look, you're paying me to teach them. That's what I'm here to do. Yeah. I'm not a psychiatrist. I'm not a psychologist. I'm actually kind of bad at it. I'm not exactly sure if I would give the great advice. I could certainly listen to them and recommend somebody that they probably should be talking to. You know, I could give guidance, but, you know, don't hold me to what I tell them to do. Like for your, you know, you probably tell kids, look, you know, because the college pressure and forcing them in that direction is still pretty intense, I would imagine.
Yeah. And I'll tell you, and I just wrote an email to somebody about this the other day, and I understand, I understand the county that we live in. And I think it's great that they're wanting to send kids to college. And when you look at many of their parents went to college. And I think that's another part, apart from the school thing, was we've watered down college so much. Everybody has to go to college, and you get a college degree. That's how you get a good job. And
there's extended adolescence at this point.
Yeah. So I think when you look at Williamson County, you know, I understand the idea of college, but there are many students that I want to talk to who we are leaving out many kids. Yeah. Like if they don't like school, well, I guess if I don't have college, I guess I'm just a loser who will have nothing.
That was me.
Yeah. And I wish, and I was ignorant when I was younger. I remember thinking that kids that went to the trade school
were less than.
Well, yeah, it's like, oh, they can't do this. And then I was a teacher and I was substitute teaching, and I went to the CVC program. I'm like, these kids just built a 2-story house in this warehouse. These guys over here are fixing cars. This person's working in dental hygienist. This person was actually a teacher. They were taking teacher classes. This person's making a video game. Hey, but you know what? I know the amendments in the Constitution, and I can tell you a theorem in math, but these kids are getting stuff done. Yeah. You know, and I think that the biggest flaw in education is that we are trying to think that education is the only way. We need to be pushing more for trade schools. If you like working with your hands, go work with your hands. If you like creating, go create. If you like learning, go learn. Like open up more avenues. And we never talk about military. And I talked about that with the kids. When you go to metro schools, what you see in their hallways, hey, join the military. Join the military, right? And this hasn't changed from, you go back to the American Revolution. You know, it was lower income farmers who were doing the fighting while the aristocrats are sitting out there fighting or arguing why we should be going to war. Right. So when you look at like Metro, they're pushing that, maybe not as much college. And then you look at, like we just had something where we're celebrating the college. It's like, what are you gonna do for college? And I'm looking at some students like, that kid already knows how to fix brakes on a car. I'm still struggling with knowing how to open my gas tank, right? Right. So I truly wish that we put a lot more emphasis on the trades to make these kids feel, and I think there's an emotional aspect where they won't feel like a loser, where, you know what, maybe education isn't for me, but I'm still going to be successful. Right. And I'm going to be somebody.
There's still a path.
Yeah. You know, I talk to a lot of kids at the end of the year. Has nothing to do with state standards, but we do a project where I show them my paycheck. I'm like, okay, this is my paycheck. I take out my address so they don't toilet paper my house, of course, but I'm like, this is my paycheck. These are taxes. This is how many sick days I have, whatever. I have them pick a job. They have to find an apartment or a house. They've got to figure out the taxes. We pick out of a hat and say, today, you ran over a rake. Looks like you got to buy a new tire for $300. So now they have to put that into their budget. And I looked at one kid who, this was 3 years ago. He came back. He goes, I remember that project, and I really always wanted to be like a mechanic. And I started looking at that, and he's fixing cars. He's in high school making more than I am by purchasing cars, fixing them up.
He's flipping them.
Yeah, but you know what? But he doesn't have a college degree. So he's not successul.
I'd be curious to see if kids really do feel that notion these days. If like I did back in my day. Do you guys really feel like you're not going to be a success in life if you don't go to college? Do you think that's still?
I do.
Really?
Yes. Not as much as what I felt, because again, we were from a blue collar neighborhood where Many of my friends didn't go to college. Some did, some didn't. And I know, and they're all successful. That's what's funny. They are all successful. My buddy who barely graduated high school, and I tell this story to my kids, he barely graduated high school, so I must be a loser.
Mm-hmm.
No. He ended up going to HVAC school.
Yeah.
And my dad gave him advice because he didn't really have a dad. And my dad said, whenever you get free education, I don't care if it's coloring in between the lines. Mm-hmm. If someone's going to pay for it, you take it. And he went to my dad, and my dad gave him some advice. So he goes, okay, I'm going to go to this school. So it was HVAC. And then he goes, well, I don't know. Should I move to this? I don't know if I should move out of state. It's kind of scary. My dad's like, if the job's there, you go for it.
Mm-hmm.
You can always come home. So he went, he did that. He's making over $100,000 a year.
Oh, yeah.
But you know what he doesn't have? He doesn't have that college degree.
Right.
You know what I mean? And again, I think because I came from a blue collar neighborhood where people were working in the factories, or they're going to college, or they were selling cars, whatever it might be, Williamson County is a little different. I think that here they feel more pressure because everybody is pushing college.
It's peer pressure, and the parents, like Gary Vaynerchuk talks about this concept of, if it's important to you for your kid to go to college, that's not their problem.
Yeah.
Okay. It's more important for you to have that bumper sticker or whatever it is you want to put on your car window. My kid goes to XYZ university. That's for your self-esteem, not theirs.
That's a good point.
It is a very good
Excellent point.
And now no one ever really talks about that. I mean, it was important for my parents, for both of my brother and I, to go to college. Now, he did the path. I was the one that was, my father recognized it in me that I was a lot more like him. And I think he had a lot more forgiveness. They both were very, okay with it. They didn't really hold it over my head, the fact that I wasted their money. But they, my father immediately recognized after that we tried that. It didn't work out. So now you're going to go learn what I did, But they always had that, if the blue collar families, the attitude back in the day was, I just don't want you to do what I had to do.
That's a good point.
And it's like, I want you to have a better life than me. I'm going, to what detriment though? Mm. You want your kid to have an easy life? Where's the challenge? I mean, I think we're seeing the effects of no struggle and no suffering in society in this generation that's coming up. They're creating situations to have the illusion of suffering and struggle. Yeah. And it's not real. I'm sorry to say.
No, and I think, and I try to stress to my students, I said, in my class, kids will fail. There's 25 kids will fail in my class with an F. And I tell them there's actually more than that, because some of you guys are used to getting an A or a B. So for you, a C is failing.
Right.
And that's because you're expecting better, right? So there is a large struggle. And I remember that was a big push I got in the beginning when I first moved down here, because people couldn't understand it. And then my principal was great, and she says, okay, we'll trust you. And I tell parents, like, let your kid fail, because nobody's checking their 8th grade report card. Nobody. Yeah. And it's better they fail now, because the second they get into high school, if college really is in the future, every grade matters, because then you're competing for hundreds and thousands of dollars for scholarships. Will you get into the school you want? So fail now so that later on you can have some success. And, I think we have removed, and I don't think we intend to do it, but I think society is viewing it as like, I care about my kids and I want them to do well. I want them to do well. And they don't understand that we learn through falling down. We crawled, we fell on our face. We got up, when we'd waddle around, we fall down, and we get back up. Yeah. So I think people try to remove those hindrances from us. It's funny, and this is kind of on point, kind of not, but talking about struggles, my brother just got a text right before I came over here. And it's drizzling outside, and somebody texted him and said, hey, would you mind picking the kids up from the bus? Because it's drizzling outside. Mm-hmm. It's 100 yards from the bus stop to his house. Mm-hmm. No, right. Walk in the rain, man. Right. Walk in the rain. But
you bring up a good point, because how many times have I been caught behind a school bus picking up kids like at every other driveway?
That blows my mind.
I'm like, why are we doing this? Mm-hmm. It's called a bus stop. Congregate there. Pick them all up. Have 20 kids sitting. I don't care how long it takes you to walk to it.
Yeah.
That's what we did.
It's on every single corner.
Dude, I mean, I've been behind a bus sometimes where it's like they're picking, like, kids just waiting at the end of the driveway. And they're literally 20 feet apart. And the bus, I'm like, you're sending a signal that, stop this. This is madness.
Yeah. My wife and I always joke with my wife. So when I say, like, we got in a fight, it's not really a fight. But the other day when it dipped down real low, got to like 19 degrees.
Yeah.
Right. She's getting ready to take my daughter to school in the car. And normally she walks. I'm like, what are you doing? She's like, oh, it's cold outside. I'm like, yeah. She said, well, we're going to drive. I'm like, hey, but Joe, wouldn't it be kind of cool to walk? She goes, yeah. And my wife's looking at me like, are you serious right now? Right. Because I wasn't the one walking. She was the one walking.
Yeah.
But no. And she went and she walked her and it was like 19 degrees. And she was like one of the only people on the path walking. And Ava Jo asked me, because then Rachel made me go get her.
Yeah.
Right, and pick her up. And I was walking and Rachel's like, man, or Ava's like, why do we walk? I'm like, because nobody else is.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And when things get hard, you keep going. Mm-hmm. And she loved it. And she goes, she was like, I can't put my arms down, like from the movie Christmas Story.
Yeah.
But no, it's like it's like you give them a little bit of suffering and people want to shy away from it.
Well, that's the struggle and the suffering is, like with my oldest daughter, we've been having, I had a conversation with her the other night and, the reality is kind of hit in college. She's in her second year. It's been a year. It's been a tumultuous year for us as a family unit. I'm sure for a lot of people this year has been tough. But we've had our own experiences and stuff. So Cammie is, she and I had a conversation the other night and all the things that she was talking about, I said, yeah, this is everything I didn't want for you. Mm-hmm. All this pressure and stuff like that, like feeling you have to pick a major. You're 19 freaking years old, man. I said, and this is the problem. I think that everybody in the 20 to 40, it's a tumultuous time of their life, at least how society has deemed it,
Yeah.
Peer pressure. You got your own pressure. You got expectations in terms of where you need to be in life. You got perceived expectations that seem to be signaled on social media and how people just have, better than you.
I'll go there with you on
right.
that too.
And you have all these different things, family, having kids, all these things that have to happen in that space of 20 years. And then it all starts with you have to pick the one thing you're going to do for the rest of your life. And then by the time you hit your 40s, I see this constantly. Like 37 to 43 is when people they wake up and go, what the hell am I doing? Mm-hmm. And they have a pivot at that point in their life where they go into something. This is something I enjoy. Now I found my element. I found a purpose, something that fulfills me.
Yeah.
What I've been doing for the past 20 years. Yeah. Paid the bills and did all the things. I can't stand getting up.
Yeah.
It's not a good way to live.
They're not laughing every day.
No. And it's there is an element of, Grant Cardone talks of like, look, even if you're doing something you hate, get great at it. Get great at what you hate. Because if you do that, it'll show you the path to getting to something that you enjoy doing. When I was an electrician after the phone system business, my father got out of it and I didn't want it. The next step for me was to become an apprentice electrician, which I did, learned a tremendous amount of valuable skills that still help me today. Even the businesses that we run, I still am able to contribute on that level. But at the time I was like, this is not me.
Yeah.
And I knew that. I knew I wanted to get in the radio, even though I knew it was good. Like being a teacher, I knew radio wasn't going to pay well. Mm-hmm. But I figured it out. I could start a side hustle. I could do this kind of thing and supplement, which is what I did. And I learned how to be an entrepreneur and so on and so forth. But I went headfirst into radio because I got that early experience of waking up in the morning and wondering, why do I have to do this again? Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's a terrible place to be.
Yeah. And that's unfortunate when you find yourself, because you don't know how it happened.
Right.
And that's like we were just saying, I don't think parents intend for their kids for them to feel like they don't view it as like I'm pushing my kid towards college. Mm-hmm. But did you have a sit down conversation of like, so what do you want to do? Mm-hmm. So I think it just kind of snowballs on everybody. And then the social media, like I think social media in general is like one of the worst things that happened to the human race. Mm-hmm. I think that, it has its pros, but I think, when you see everyone else with the perfect family, you see everyone else with the job that they like, you see this, and you're trying to chase what other people have, but you don't see like when they're away from their phone, they got dirty dishes in the sink. Yeah. They might be hating their job. And I think that you see all these other people posting all the positives. We need to have like a Facebook or a Twitter, like, here, put all the negatives out there.
Right.
Let people get hit with some reality of like, no. My wife and I, again, she got mad at me one time because I looked around my house. We had at that point like a 2-year-old and a newborn. I'm working, she works. I'm looking at dishes in the sink, laundry all over. I'm like, click. And I took a picture and I put it on Facebook. And I was like, this is our present state. Like, hopefully your day's going just as well, you know? and my wife, she'd be, why would you do that? It makes us look like we're not doing anything. But the reaction, people took pictures of theirs like, oh, this is my bathroom. This is this. And like, we're all in it together, you know? And I wish that people knew that, like, we're all struggling sometimes.
I had even in the business entrepreneurial space, there's a lot of that comparison that goes on. My business partner is currently in the beta phase, and he's kind of beta testing it with us, reading his latest book that he's putting out. And it's called There Is No Crisis. And it's all about business owners who lay awake at night trying to discern fear from anxiety and all the things that come along with being an entrepreneur and a business owner. But those guys even have the same kind of issue with all these business influencers, thought leaders that are in that space that, man, I just bought, I'm going to the Ferrari dealership and picking up my newest car. Check it out. I'm always sharply dressed. And, there's a lot of that kind of going on without the, nobody's talking about the struggles, these guys that have been at it for 20 years, 20-year overnight success kind of thing. And I said, that's a great book, because I think there's just a really big bubble of frustration that needs to be addressed in that field. I had a conversation this morning with a friend of mine, Danny Cruz, over here at Tollgate, and he sells mortgages, but that has nothing to do with it. But he and I started talking about the generation coming up, and someone telling them, I wish somebody told me, hey man, if college doesn't work out, you're going to be fine. You just got to figure it out. You got to figure out your path. If you get to 27, 28, 29 years old and you still haven't figured it out, okay, we got to figure something out. Yeah. But literally you have that kind of runway. You can figure it out. You can make stuff happen in your 30s pretty damn quick, especially if it's something that just, it makes your soul sing. Yeah. You know what I mean? So it got me the idea. I'm like, maybe there just needs to be a podcast, like from a fatherly approach of letting people know, look, yeah, sure, you're going to fail. And talk to people that have found themselves in that 20-ish yeyear, age range. Yeah. I was 28 when I realized this is who I was. Yeah. And you need to forgive yourself. You have enough pressure as it is. And all that pressure can truly misguide you and make you make bad decisions because you feel the pressure. Dude, you're 19. Yeah. You're 18. You just graduated high school and they're forcing you to make a decision on the rest of your life. So with Cammie, she's like, I just don't know if psychiatry is the right thing. I said, good, then pick what's easy? Just pick it and go with it. What am I supposed to do with an English degree? Who cares? You'll have a degree. Okay. Yeah. I think, what's funny is I was thinking about this the other day. Teaching is an avenue where you can take so many different college degrees. So psychiatrist, is that what Cammie wants to do? She was right now. That's the flavor of the month. Yeah. Psychiatry. Well, you mean a job that's probably going to be replaced by AI at some point? And it will be. Yeah. That's coming. Yeah. And they'll go to Google, what should I do when I'm feeling this way? Someone's going to come up with an AI psychiatry app where you can subscribe every month for pennies on the dollar from what you're going to pay a human being. And you're going to have a personalized AI personality avatar, whatever it is, that has all the information input into it. And it'll learn who you are and, help you through the different things. And it'll be literally like talking to a human being. I guarantee you. I guarantee you. Well, what is it? Is it not WebMD, but well, that's a different thing. Well, I was going to say the online doctors were now you just sit there and you type in and and it's not AI, but that's where it's going. Surgeons are going to be like trade schools. Yeah. There's people, but then again, who's to say that robots won't be able to do that job too? Yeah. Teaching. So here's the thing with teaching though. And this is what I was going to say with Cammie. So I feel like teaching, if you want to be a psychiatrist, that's what teachers are doing. They're talking to kids. Right. You like marketing, you're marketing what you're selling. All how many kids don't like social studies that I've got to market to? You sell them on it? Yeah. Hey guys, we're going to talk about the Articles of Confederation. Who's pumped? And what? Yeah. So marketing, psychiatry, or psychologist, all that stuff. I think teaching engulfs so many words. So for her, what am I supposed to do in an English major? You'll figure it out. Yeah. You'll figure it out. And again, a lot of times, and I was talking to my brother and my friends about this, was your college degree isn't what gets you a job anymore. Right. It's how good can you sell yourself?
how can you network? Like in college, you were saying networking. You're meeting people,
right,
and you're networking. And that's what a lot of it is. So if the brain stops developing around 21, Cammie's 19 and she needs to make these decisions right now, but the brain doesn't stop developing until 21, you know? Right. So yeah, I think people will find themselves on this path because they're just being redirected. I don't want to say like sheep because it sounds negative, but like, okay, I'm supposed to go this way. And then before they know it, they're in the woods. Like, how the heck did I get here? And it's unfortunate.
Does your garage door sound like this? If it does, it's screaming for help. Call Incredible Doors, 931-348-DOOR. We're making garage doors in Murray and Williamson counties work better and sound better. We just make them incredible again. Go to IncredibleDoors.com or call 931-348-DOOR. Follow us on Facebook for specials on maintenance visits, keypads, and other items. 931-348-DOOR. IncredibleDoors.com. Well, I mean, a lot of the school system, George Carlin put it best. School systems, the American school system is there to create obedient workers, to fill seats in factories, in offices.
Yeah, that's where it started.
Things in that nature. It did start there. Yeah. It hasn't changed, you know, and that's, I think, what the ultimate, as entrepreneurial, it's become a hot topic and very popular. Once upon a time, Gary Vee talks about this. He says, at one time, calling yourself an entrepreneur means that you lived in your mother's basement.
Yeah, right.
And you were kind of a loser. Now everybody's an entrepreneur. Everyone's a CEO and stuff like that, not really knowing fully what those things mean. It's an amazing thing that to see how the evolution of where we're going, especially now with AI coming for everybody. I mean, just on this past Friday, the number one song on the digital country charts was an AI song from an AI artist. Number one song.
So you know,
it's like, you know, people in the songwriting industry, oh man, that's something to contend, man.
I think that the only reason why AI cannot replace teaching, which is it's a hard argument to make because it's replacing everything.
Right.
COVID showed us that computers can't.
Right.
Because computers didn't have the human element. Even if I can see you on camera, we can talk. You know, have Thanksgiving with somebody through Zoom, eat a meal and talk.
It's not the same.
Yeah, it's not the same.
Do a podcast. I thought, I have the same thing.
So I think that COVID showed us how important, when it comes to education, that you need to have teachers in the building. Now, will you have less teachers in a building? Sure, maybe. Right. But you need teachers for the human interaction. I think because students don't react to content. They don't react to information. They react to the person who wants to help them and teach them and guide them in that.
Right.
I think that's the only saving grace for teachers, in my opinion.
Yeah, there's a relationship aspect of it.
Yeah.
You know, that's one of the things I had Reggie Ham on, who's a notable singer-songwriter here in town. We talked about the country song being AI. And as a songwriter, he's like, I really have no problem with it. He says, I'm not going to give it any credence because one of the things I want to do is play it on the show and have us kind of review it. He said, I'd rather not do that. He says, because I think honestly, some 15-year-old hacked an algorithm.
Really?
And figured it out and put it out there. He says, and one of the things that came out of the episode was, look, the one thing that AI will never be able to kind of replicate, maybe it will, who knows, is the human motivation behind the song. Why was it written? Mm-hmm. And we talked about Dan Fogelberg's song called Another Auld Lang Syne. If you listen to Mix 92.9 after Thanksgiving, you're going to hear it a lot because it's a Christmas song. And I brought that up, and Reggie goes, he says, we talked until our tongues were tired. He says, do you honestly think an AI can come up with that line? Does it know what it's like to talk until your tongues were tired? Yeah. He says, I literally have had conversations where my tongue was tired from talking.
Yeah. Or the idea of you've laughed so hard that your face hurts.
Right.
You know, or your belly hurts. Yeah, that's an excellent point. There's you take out the whole just personal human aspect of it.
Right.
You know, so, lyrically it sounds great, but there's no emotion behind it.
I think honestly, the next generation that you're experiencing, our kids, your kids you're teaching, are going to be probably one of the most emotionally sensitive generation due to lack of some sort of a calamity. I think that we're overdue for a calamity, as well as cynical. they're not going to know what true is, what's real and what's not.
And that's scary.
That's scary, and but they're going to be cynical because of that. Their BS meters are going to be really highly attuned.
When I talk about the American Revolution, and we'll talk about propaganda, right? People think like propaganda is something new and all that stuff with Facebook.
No.
Dude, it's been going on forever.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And like the Boston Massacre is where I show that. And I show them a chart. I said, okay, so this is our media today, from Fox News to CNN to MSNBC and all over the place. And I show that, right? And then I show them where they are on the political spectrum, which way they lean and all that. And then I said, they'll talk about the same exact topic through different lenses. And then I show them a graphic of trust in the media. To your point, the older generation, it's decreased a little bit.
Yeah.
But then you look at the younger crashes,
yeah,
right? Because they're getting, well, this and this and this and this, and you don't know what to believe.
Yeah.
You know, and that's why I tell my students, I think the biggest thing that schools sometimes need to focus on more are life skills. Like I tell the parents at the beginning of the year, like my class, if they learn social studies, great. It is a life skills class. Hard work, effort, learn how to learn, communication skills, looking somebody in the eye, right? Speaking with confidence, all that. And I think when you kind of look at what's happening there, I think schools are missing that opportunity to we're trying to make stronger leaders.
Yeah.
Right. So when you look at like the trust in the media, right? I showed them that graphic and they go, yeah, I don't believe. I'm like, that's why you watch as much as you can. You watch Fox News and then you go to CNN and then you go to MSNBC. And at least you got, okay, even if I don't agree with what they're feeding me, whatever they're trying to spoon feed me, at least I know the perspective. And now I can know how to defend it and all that. So I think you just got to read as much as you can, look as much as you can, try and gather as much as you can and say, all right, this is the information. I can throw this out.
I have the conversations with my kids about that. I said, you need to look, they're really bad at taking things out of context because media is a master of just focusing in on, 100 feet when there's actually 1,000-foot viewpoint to really take into consideration. And I always bring that up. I said, you need to look at this in context. Well, so-and-so said Trump is a Nazi and blah, 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 and he is. Okay. Look, I'm not this guy's staunchest advocate. I'm not any of their staunchest advocate because of my life experience.
Yeah.
They say what they need to say for the most part. But to go to that extent and say that he's Hitler is utterly ridiculous.
Yeah.
Okay. And here's why. And you kind of go into it and they bring up all these things. I said, are you reading the headlines or are you reading the actual article? And I said, and also there's the other aspect of this. What of this can you control?
Yeah.
You have no control over this. It is having a subliminal and subconscious effect on your mind, and it's eating up precious resources in your brain and taking up space and not paying you any rent for it in your head. And it really, at the end of the day, you have no control over it. How does this better your life?
I used to love politics.
Right.
Like I remember when you asked me, is there anything else? There was a while there, like I thought politics. And actually, I ran for something and things were going good and I enjoyed it. The last 2 years, I've disconnected.
Oh, I don't blame you.
And I'll tell you, it just, because again, I think from a historical perspective, when people are like, oh, well, Trump's doing this, or Biden is doing that, or Obama, or Bush, or whoever it might be. You don't think this has all happened before? I showed an article. I showed an article to my students one time. This is when Trump and Hillary were running against each other. And I'm like, whoa, all right. And I printed out the article and I crossed off Hillary Clinton's name. I crossed off Trump's name and I crossed off the third person. I forget who it was that was running. And I said, okay, guys, so here's the story. Fill in who goes where. And they go, oh, well, okay, Andrew Jackson, Henry Clay, and maybe John Quincy Adams. It was the same identical story to the Krupp bargain that happened. I'm like, guys, this isn't over. And that's why I never ask my kids about dates. I never ask about years. I'm like, because it doesn't matter. In the end, we're on this revolution that keeps on going. Great Awakening. I think the Great Awakening is a fantastic example where you look at the Great Awakening and it happened mid 1700s, mid 1800s, Second Great Awakening. Some would argue that the 1960s, where the hippies are going back to church because peace, love, and all that. And, oh, Jesus, okay, they're going back to church. So now you're in the 1960s. So if you're looking at the pendulum, we're creeping down on the 2030s. And when you look at what's happening in churches and all that, you have this big movement happening.
You see that book over my shoulder?
Which one? Pendulum?
Pendulum.
Is that what that's about?
It's in 80-year increments, though.
Okay.
Yeah. So basically, that's why I said we're long past due for a bloody calamity, is because of that book. That book is a descendant of a book called Generations. And it talks about the same concept where it's a systolic, diastolic, 20-year patterns of society and societal attitudes, cultural attitudes, really, especially in the Eastern Hemisphere or the Western Hemisphere. The Eastern side is actually quite the opposite.
Interesting.
It goes back in Pendulum, it goes back 3,000 years, and it talks about the popular music, writings. That has nothing to do with left or right politics or economies or anything like that. But one of the things that the book proclaims is that we go from a we zenith to a me, and they're typically 40-year swings. But every time we go through a we, it's the worst part of the pendulum. And the zenith,
I can see that.
The zenith of the we just happened in 2023.
Really?
And it happened again 80 years ago. So if you go back to 80 years ago, it was 1943, right in the middle of a world war. 80 years before that, Civil War.
Yeah.
80 years before that.
That's interesting.
Revolutionary War, at least in the American sense. We are long overdue. It could have been COVID, but it wasn't as tumultuous and traumatic.
Could have been.
And it could have been.
And what I liked about COVID, and people passed away and it was sad. Right. But what I loved is America showed you why America was America. Where when other countries were like, oh yeah, we're going to do this. Again, going back to us having individual states, they're like, yeah, I'm not doing that. well, no, you actually have to. Like, no, I really don't.
Right.
And you saw America like, I'm not wearing the mask, or I'm not doing that, and I'm not doing that. And again, nothing against people who wore masks, nothing against people who got shots and all that. But I think you saw America. Why it would be so hard to take over America is because you have so many I won't swear.
Yeah.
You have so many stubborn people who are like, no, because I don't want to.
Right.
So I think, and it's not what America was built on.
It was.
So you go from not wanting to talk to the king, or you look at Protestant faith, not wanting to follow a pope, or not wanting to follow the soldiers. That's what it is. Right. And I talk about Massachusetts. Now, I'm not going to start teaching stuff here, right? But no, we look at Massachusetts. It started from day one with the Mayflower. They said, okay, we're in the wrong spot. Mayflower Compact. We're going to govern ourselves. And then all of a sudden they had some town meetings. And then when you look at where the American Revolution started, it started in Massachusetts because they said, no, we're not doing that. From day, we're not going to listen to that king. Yeah. And then later on, American Revolution's over. I guess we're friends. But then you had the Shays Rebellion, which were Massachusetts farmers saying, no, government, why are you taking our stuff? Yeah. Right. So we put our heels in the ground.
It's good. And it's funny because you mentioned that, and I've always had this theory. I don't know the exact time frames of these events, but what were the significant events that led up to the point where somebody said, okay, enough. Mm-hmm. The beast was woken up. And okay, now we're declaring war on your ass. What were those events, and what was the time frame leading up to it? It's Revolutionary War, for example.
So for that, it's funny because I'll cover the American Revolution or the Civil War in like 1 week. Mm-hmm. But the causes, I'll be at it for like 3 weeks. Right. So when you look at like what caused the American Revolution, mm-hmm. So I think you looked at first you had the Navigation Acts, right? Navigation Acts are pretty much, I always explain it as Halloween candy, trick-or-treating, where England said, okay, you're going to use our ships. We're going to go through and take what we want. And everything has to come through us first. Mm-hmm. So a kid comes home with candy. You're checking the candy when really you're just taking the candy you want and all that stuff, right? And we really didn't follow that. And then they came in and said, okay.
When did that happen?
That would have been, I believe, that was 1730s.
Okay. So you're talking
80.
50 years before the Revolutionary War started.
Yeah. So you had a law. No one really followed it.
Right.
King wasn't really enforcing it. But then you had the Great Awakening going on, mm-hmm. where people were starting to think a little bit differently. Like if we're thinking about religion, why can't we think about other things like government differently? Right. So there's a connection there. But then you had the king come in and say, okay, hey, we fought this war for you. Time for you guys to pay taxes. Because America really wasn't paying taxes.
Right.
We were giving cash crops. So they said, well, we don't want to do that. So then they passed more taxes, right? Sugar Act and all that. Didn't want to do that. But what I think is interesting is when you get to the propaganda aspect. The Boston Tea Party happens where everyone's like, okay, we got mad, we threw tea into the ocean, right? Now, the real cause of the American Revolution, 10 years before. That's where things start really escalating.
That's where it started hockey sticking.
Yeah.
Right.
So what you had, when you look at the Boston Tea Party, for instance, it wasn't random, right? You had your lower income farmers, people that worked on the boat docks, who were going and hanging out in bars, getting angry. And then you had your aristocrats, right? You had your
the bougie,
your John Hancocks and those guys, Sam Adams, and they're sitting there. And Sam Adams owns the bar, so he owns a bar that still exists today. All these guys are getting drunk. John Hancock, he owned the harbor, most of the harbor.
Right.
He knows what's coming in and going out. He goes and tells Sam Adams, "I've got a shipment coming in at this time." Sam Adams goes back to his bar, giving out shots. Hey, how about that stupid tea act, huh? Yeah. He gets them riled up. They go, they're throwing all the tea. So I think when you look at that, you always have the people who are calling shots, paying money, but then you got the foot soldiers who are carrying it all out. I always thought that was kind of interesting how it all plays out. Because a lot of kids think it happened for 2 years, taxes and all that.
No.
Right?
It was proverbial pot of boiling water with a frog in it. Yeah.
We'll do a debate on who was to blame for the Boston Massacre. Was it the colonists or was it the soldiers? And we'll debate that. And what's funny about that is they were demanding, we want our tax money back. And the day that the Boston Massacre happened over in England, they actually repealed the tax. Said, all right, fine, we're not going to do it anymore.
Right. Just didn't make it to the...
Too late. Yeah. Too late. We don't have Twitter, right?
Yeah. Not instantaneous.
Yeah. But I think, so going back to more recent politics, and one thing I'm happy about, my students have no idea what I am politically.
Right.
They don't know if I'm Republican, Democrat, whatever. And I'll challenge them on anything they say, even if I agree. And sometimes...
So what are you?
I'm the right one. I'm the correct one. I'm the smart one. You know that. So I'll sit there, and sometimes the words that'll come out of my mouth, I'm like, I hate what I'm saying right now because I know I don't agree with it at all.
Right.
But I'm just going to challenge the kids, get them to think.
Yeah, sure.
But when I look at Trump, and people are like, oh well, Trump, this and that. Trump didn't get himself elected. Something caused Trump to happen.
Right.
I think Americans were angry at everything that's going on. So I think when Trump came along, it was the right time of something different. But things that happened up before Trump, that's what got him elected. It wasn't him.
Right.
And I think that people kind of sometimes look past that.
Well, I think what ultimately did it was the debate with Hillary, where he says, yeah, I absolutely did take advantage of the tax loopholes because you allowed them. You've had the entire time, all this time to change them, but you know that all of our rich friends take advantage of them, and those are the people that support you. Let's just be honest.
Yeah.
And that was one of the most, oh, wow.
That was eye-opening. He's admitting to.
Oh, yeah.
He goes, yeah, but I'm not doing anything illegal.
Right.
Yeah. I have the money and the lawyers that can do that.
Right. And you're doing the exact same thing.
Yeah. And it's funny, again, when you look at Trump and you look at Biden and Hillary, it's all the same.
It is.
I think you look at, I think you look at our current state of politics sometimes. And now to be fair, maybe social media has really put gasoline on it.
Right. So
I think that's a fair statement to be made. But I mean, I loved when it was Trump in the first election, this is the most divided America's ever been. And I'm like, you ever hear of the Civil War?
That's exactly what I said.
You know what I mean? And
that's one of the things that book talks about. This is Ecclesiastes. There's nothing new under the sun. We've been through this before.
Yeah.
Well, we're as divided as we've ever. No, we're not.
Yes.
We're not freaking killing each other yet. We haven't drawn lines in the sand and Confederate and Union armies and stuff like that. That hasn't happened.
Well, how about this? And to go and again, I actually I talked about this before with students. And again, I say I don't agree with a party and all that politics. I say, I'll give you pros and cons for both. But when you look at what's happening with ICE, for instance, I told you, or not you, but I mentioned 3 weeks ago, a month ago, this is what's going to happen. You're going to have a Boston Massacre on your hands. And it's going to be one of these, you got people doing a job. I said, whether you like what ICE is doing or not, people are people. They're told to do a job. They're doing a job. Right? And they're going out, and then you have some protesters. And then you had some more ICE agents show up, and then more protesters got more vocal, more violent, started throwing stuff. Somebody shoots a rubber bullet.
That's it.
And oh my gosh, this is horrible. Why? It's happened before.
Yeah.
It's happened before.
Well, look at the whole Charlie Kirk thing.
Yeah.
I mean, you take that into consideration as well. Now, people, literally just trying to have conversations with people. They didn't like what he was saying or how he was able to articulate his viewpoint and his worldview. Mm-hmm. So, when you start vilifying people as Hitler for so long, people start to feel like, well, that means I'm being oppressed. So that means I need to take out my oppressor.
Yeah.
And that's literally kind of what's happening as we're seeing it roll out. I honestly feel we need, that's the big reset button. And we're kind of overdue for it.
I agree. I think that shifted a lot of things. Yeah. I always think about how many Hitlers have we had? Because I know that people called Trump Hitler, people called Obama Hitler, mm-hmm. people called Bush Hitler.
Yeah.
Like, how many times has this happened already?
You really denigrate. You're taking the impact of the name, really diminishing it.
Yeah, it's like, okay, I guess we've had a lot.
The term racist means nothing now.
Yeah,
it really doesn't have any. Yeah. It doesn't have any sting anymore.
I think sometimes people have confused racism and prejudice. I think
it's the wrong word to begin with.
I think that.
It's culturist. That's the word we should be using, but I've made that case before. The other thing that people don't get pissed off enough, and this is something I said, everyone's talking about interest rates. They're talking about, homes being too expensive. I just saw a whole litany of arguments today on Facebook about HOAs. Mm-hmm. Like, that's why we live in, because I want control over my house. I'm like, you got news for you, pal. You don't own it.
Yeah.
Well, I have a mortgage, and once I pay it off, I'm going to own my house.
In 30 years.
Really? Oh, yeah, the 50-year mortgage thing, that was another thing that people talked about. I'm like, you still don't own it. I had this conversation with a friend of mine in the car business who was a general manager, and he's like, I got one more payment, and my house is mine. I said, oh, yeah? No more payments on it, huh? He goes, nope. I said, none whatsoever.
Yeah.
And he goes, he's kind of paused, like, what are you getting at? Mm-hmm. And I just kind of looked at him. And he looked at me and said, well, I guess I get my property taxes. I said, and what happens if you don't pay those?
Yeah.
Well, I guess they come and take my house. I said, so who really owns your house? You don't.
It's interesting to see, I think, Florida, Ohio.
Oh, yeah. That's a good conversation.
Yeah. I
Next one that has to be has income taxes.
Is Tennessee are they doing something with property taxes, Tennessee?
I can imagine. I don't know if they are, but I would imagine they would probably follow suit. Because, that's a manipulative topic that divides people. Well, you need to be paying your fair share. And what are we going to do if we don't have property taxes? And blah, blah, blah. I'm like, guys, I understand what you're saying, but let's go above that a few thousand feet and look at the grand scheme of things. You don't own crap.
Yeah.
You don't own your property.
I had this conversation with the students. My big thing is I teach them history stuff, but I try to teach them like how it applies in the world. So we were talking about Shays Rebellion. Mm-hmm. How I'm like, so who owns the house? And I let them know, like, now some of your parents might own the house.
Right.
Very few people have $400,000 cash in a suitcase, or they're doing something illegal, most likely. Right. Or moved from California and sold their house.
Right.
But I explained to them about how you go to a bank for a loan and all this stuff and interest rates, and then how the banks were taking the farmers' houses, and that's what led to the whole rebellion, right? So I was talking about that. But more of kind of we talk about the foreclosure crisis and who was to blame? Was it the banks or was it the people? So we had all those conversations. But I think when you brought up Charlie Kirk, a positive I took away from that with my students, because I tell my kids there are positives and negatives of everything. And it's hard to find them sometimes, like Holocaust. Hard to find any positive, but the world came together and said, hey, we need to put in restrictions to make sure this doesn't happen again.
Right.
So we take away some sort of positive. So I think when I looked at Charlie Kirk, when that happened, we do a lot of debates in my class. And I think the problem is where we live in social media society where I'll say anything I want behind the computer because nobody can touch me.
Right.
And I'm trying to have the kids break that down where, have a conversation with a human being. So when we'll have the debate, like say you said something, well, he said that, no, he's right there. Mm-hmm. You look him in the eye and you address him. And I explain how there's this fallacy that you need to respect everyone's opinion. You don't have to respect everyone's opinion.
Right.
Absolutely not. You have to respect their right to have an opinion. You should respect the person. But no, there's numerous people that say things. Trump, maybe I agree with some of his stuff. Maybe I don't, but he's got the right to say it.
Yeah.
Right. So I think out of the Charlie Kirk, when I think the students and middle schoolers knew who he was, it's not like,
oh, I know.
Like for sure, high schoolers knew. They knew it right when it happened. Their phone was blowing up and they were talking about it. And I think they saw what happens when you silence someone. Even if you don't agree with that person, you're on kind of a slippery slope where you might not like what they have to say, but you better give them the right to say it, because one day you won't have something to say.
Right.
But that was kind of the positive we took away from the whole Charlie Kirk thing. But I don't know. I think they need these life skills. I think these students need these life skills of being able to talk and communicate and talk man to man, woman to woman, and not do this social media thing where I'll say anything I want because you can't touch me.
Well, the funny thing is, I tell my kids that, hey, you got to go out and find a job. With Spencer, we've been on him to get more regular work after school. We're also taking into account that he lost essentially 2 years of development from COVID. So right where he is right now is basically a 15-year-old mindset. Mm-hmm. Okay, now I need to get a job. And it's like, I'm trying to have empathy moving forward with that. But I tell them, I said, you guys realize that if you just write grammatically correct with capitalization and punctuation, it's going to put you above everyone else. Mm-hmm. It's that easy.
Yeah.
It's not difficult to outshine and differentiate yourselves from your peers, because you all sound like morons.
Yeah.
And you write like idiots with the text speak.
I think Williamson County, I think they actually, I don't think it was a school thing. I think it was Williamson County. They were talking about that. Mm-hmm. We need to teach these kids how to write emails. And I told the kids, we're starting to slowly get out of COVID, not for your son because he's older.
Yeah.
But like this generation, now we're getting back to like, okay, kids being kids. Yeah. But has education raising the bar? Have they gone back to raising the bar, which I think could be a debatable thing. Yeah. But you look at your son's generation, like, guys, like you are in a perfect time to really set yourselves apart. Yeah. I get emails now. Hey, Mr. S, all lowercase, misspelled. Mm-hmm. Like, first of all, proofread it. Yeah. Second of all, I'm a person, but even though like I'm a person, you still have to follow the rules of society and be like, hello, Mr. Svihlik. Mm-hmm. I know, are my feelings hurt? You didn't call me Mr. Svihlik? No, but I'm not hiring you for a job.
Right.
You know what I mean? So there's a big difference. And I think that's the biggest thing also is just like, nobody's teaching it. And parents don't think of it. Like, I think parents
parents are the biggest culprits. Okay. You go on any freaking Facebook post these days. Yeah. The wrong use of there is like, someone's trying to make what they think an educational, intelligent post or response to something completely disintegrates once, in my mind, once the grammar isn't there, I completely cast judgment and they're done.
I think I got a D in 7th grade English, so I might not know that they're there and there. That one might be a struggle for me.
It's instinct for me.
But no, I think,
if I'm doubtful when I'm doing it, I at least try and double check.
Well, I think commas. The biggest thing I help kids with are commas, and I learned this from a college professor one time because in all seriousness, like ELA was like whatever. Sometimes I did well, but he said, "Read your paper out loud." Mm-hmm. And when I did, I go, "Wow, I sound pretty stupid." He goes, "Yeah, that sounds pretty dumb, right?" And then I tell the kids, listen to how dumb you sound. Because a lot of times, right, we'll write a paper and you know what you're trying to say. So in your head, it sounds right. But when you actually read out loud and you hear that mistake, you go,
yeah,
what? And I'll see the kid's face go, that doesn't make any sense, right? Or if they'll read, why'd you just pause? I don't know. I don't see a comma. Why'd you pause? Because there should be some sort of punctuation there. So I think that was a college professor showed me that one time. But no, I think a lot of that also comes from texting.
Yeah.
I think
it's efficient.
Yeah. I think when people text, things automatically will autocorrect and stuff like that. So again, stupefaction of America where, the computer will just fix it for me.
Right.
So I think that's part of that, but could be wrong.
Well, that's the other thing. So if you had a magic wand and were to change the educational system, what would you do if you had complete and utter control? What would be the ideal situation?
Trade schools. I think that my biggest problem is we compare American education to countries around the world. Mm. Oh, how are we doing with China? How are we doing with India? That's not a fair game. Because the thing with China and India is when you're born with a disability, you're either put to death or they just cast you aside and you're on the street. Or if you're in the rural China, rural India, you're subsistence farming. That's what you do. Or you work in a sweatshop. That's your job. In America, lower income people we're educating. Students with disabilities, we're educating. So, and I'm not saying that we shouldn't be doing that, right? So I don't want it to sound like I'm saying we shouldn't, but I think our problem is we're comparing ourselves with people who are playing a different game. I'm not going to be comparing somebody playing chess with somebody playing Hungry Hungry Hippo. And it doesn't make sense. So I think that's part of it. So I think we need to build on the strengths that people have. Like there's a lot of people who might take the mentality if you're really, really good at technology and you're okay at math, we really need to kind of pick up your math to make you a more balanced person. Where I'd say that kind of the hell with that. I think what you need to do is you need to sharpen that person's technology. If he's got a skill set for technology, you build on that as much as you can. You make him the best you can. So I think when we look at, rural Tennessee, we'll just say, reading scores are really, really low. We need to put a lot of money into that to pick those reading scores up. And again, okay, you pick them up a little bit. Now what? Like if they were supposed to read at 8th grade level and they were at 2nd, now they're at a 5th grade level. Hey, you picked them up 3, but they're still well below. I think you look at what are they good at? Oh, they're good at farming. They're good at tractors. They're good at working with their hands. We build that skill set up. I think a lot of problems is I think we look at metro inner city schools and I think we're attacking that the wrong way. I think you look at it, we're trying to pick up their math scores. We're trying to pick up their reading scores. They're in a world where they're looking like, how do I get out of poverty? What is education going to get me? Right. And it's a fair point. It is 100% a fair point because when they don't see education around them, but they see a drug dealer making money or they see somebody who robs and makes money. And the end game for all of us is, to be happy and we all like making money. I think what you need to do is we need to sharpen the skills that we can in inner city. If their reading scores are low and their math scores are low, we need to find a different avenue to show them, you know what? It's okay if you can't read. It really is. What you do is you're going to be a plumber or a mechanic or a carpenter and you see how much money this drug dealer is making, you'll make double that. You'll make triple that. And
it's legal.
Yeah. And you're not looking over your shoulders. Yeah. You're not. So you're doing it the legal way. And then you know what happens? And this is the sacrifice people have to make. Then those people who might be able to become a carpenter, plumber, whatever, then those people can move to a different area. And then maybe their education, their kids' education might be a little bit better. And I don't think we should just throw people away. I think we're not opening enough avenues for people. I think we really need to open those routes up for people.
I think it's funny. I absolutely agree with you. I'll take it one step further. I think we need to start addressing purpose and fulfillment earlier.
Yeah.
What is your why? I had the conversation with my daughter again recently. I said, look, you don't know your why of what you're doing in college. There's what's your purpose? What's the fulfillment you're getting out of it? That's my whole point.
Yeah.
Why go if you don't know why you're going? If you're going to go there and you're going to ace it, like I said, on somebody else's dime, fantastic. But if you're taking out loans that are going to crush you 10, 20 years from now, and you don't know why, that's why. Yeah. What are you doing?
Yeah.
Tony Robbins talks a lot about that. People miss out on the purpose and fulfillment conversation. You knew it right early on. You knew exactly why you were put here on this earth.
And I feel like I'm rare.
Yeah.
Like there were times like, oh, maybe I want something else. But in the end, like I deep down, I know, I knew what I wanted to be.
Yeah.
It's funny. My brother was a professional baseball player, and when he was in 4th grade, somebody asked him, a teacher, like, hey, write what you want to be. And he said, professional baseball player. And the teacher said, no, like something like that they can really be. Think about saying that crap to a 4th grader.
Right.
Right. And all that. And my brother is, my brother is a hard worker, like more than any I've ever met. And he's the type of person, maybe he did it for himself, or maybe he did it to prove the 4th grade teacher wrong.
Yeah.
But he's like, you say something like that to a 4th grader.
Do you know teachers that motivate, do they purposely say stuff like that because they know it's going to motivate the student? Because I've had a guy who said that to me, Mr. Golden, not a bad teacher. There are some people, some contemporaries of mine, other students that I was in with at the time, who look at this guy as just an evil human being. I'm like, okay, I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt, Mr. Golden. I kind of see what you're doing. I don't think you were being that angry and that vitriolic for your health or for your enjoyment. if you were, that's a possibility, could happen. But he once told me, I don't know, I goofed off or I said something in class and he looked at me. He's like, and that's why you're never going to go anywhere in life. And he looked like he meant it. He looked square into my soul.
Really?
And it's like, I'll never forget him saying that. But I don't think he meant it. Because like, to your point, why would you say that to a kid?
Yeah.
That's just so mean.
Yeah.
And, maybe he did mean it. I don't know.
Did he
was a Vietnam vet. I mean, he went after a kid because he wasn't standing for the pledge. I mean, like, I had never seen anybody go, I mean, you know how many people died and my buddies died on the battlefield so you could sit on your ass and not. Blah, blah. Yeah. I mean, it was like, oh, wow.
Everyone started standing all strong. Like
taller. Oh, yeah. I mean, he laid it on the line. He did not give a crap. Mm-hmm. And it's like, I applaud him for that, looking back on it. But I mean, there are people that I know that are my age who had him as a teacher who's still like, he's a bad dude.
Yeah. I think sometimes, did you ever have a follow-up conversation or no? Is it?
No.
I think there are teachers who, again, I tell kids, like, sometimes what I say stings and I don't sometimes mean it, but sometimes you need to hit with some reality, and I'll have a follow-up conversation. Cause I don't want them to leave feeling defeated.
Right.
I want them to understand, like, why am I saying, like, did you like how that felt? Well, then we need to do something to make sure this doesn't happen. So I think I don't know. There could be people that do that. I had a coach like that, Coach Calendar. Conrad. Yeah. Oh man, he'd put you down, and I love the guy. Like it was, but he'd beat you up and put you down.
It was funny because there was a guy. I was on a podcast a couple of years ago, and I took issue with the host on a previous social media post. He was championing a sales trainer, sales coach who made his gimmick was to bring guys who were not fit up on stage and make them take their shirts off and then kind of make examples out of them or call them out in the audience. And it was all for clicks and stuff like that. That's all the reason why I was doing it. And like shaming people in a way, almost like bullying. Mm-hmm. And, this guy who was a big baseball guy was once again, he's like, well, that's the way it needs to be. And I said, okay, so you're saying that in a car dealership, there has to be public humiliation in order to inspire motivation and better performance? He's like, well, that's just how it was on my baseball team. I said, there's a difference.
Yeah.
I said, military, you can't leave.
Yeah, right.
Baseball, sports, radio, passion driven. There's deep passions when it comes to that. Yeah, you can get away with treating people like that because you're probably going to get a better version of themselves because their passion is what keeps them there.
Yeah.
I said, for a business, one of the biggest expense centers of a business is hiring and training. And the car business does it all the time. They're constantly bringing people in for the most part, training them, flooding the floor, getting them out there, and if you're at the bottom of the list at the end of the month and you're at the bottom of the heap, you're out of here.
Yeah.
Like what kind of a culture is that?
That's amazing.
That's a fear-based culture. And I said, to what extent? What's the benefit of doing this? Instead of saying, okay, let's not do this. Let's break the cycle and actually pour into these people. I said, because that's the thing. It can be a passion-driven business, but generally it's not. People are there because it's a job. Yeah. And you can make a good amount of money in a short amount of time.
No one has a passion. I one day want to sell cars.
Right.
Yeah.
There are people that get into it and they become very good at it, and that develops a passion because it's like you can. Success is confidence is the memory of success. Mm-hmm. That's what confidence is. That's where it comes from. You can feel very confident and successful immediately in the first month.
Yeah.
You can knock it out of the park, and that's the dopamine hit. But the guys that do it month after month after month after month, that's where the passion starts coming out. You know what I mean? So this guy was like, showing managers and stuff like that. This is the way you got to do it. You're shooting yourself in the foot.
Yeah.
As a manager, why would you want to continuously train people? How do you build your business that way?
Yeah.
How is that good for the customer that constantly comes into your dealership? And the guy they were dealing with last week is now gone. How does that work? You're not going to. It's an interesting business model.
Yeah, I don't. I'll tell you, there are times like
motivational structure, I should say.
Well, and I'll have students who are cutting up all the time, and I cut up in class. Like I get it, and they keep going so far, and they'll do things for attention. I'll be like, all right, guys, hold on, stop. All right, everyone look at him. He wants the floor. Right? Right.
Go ahead.
Yeah,
Spotlight's on you.
He goes, well, what? I go, I don't know. You wanted attention. We're giving you attention. You can have your attention now.
Mm-hmm.
And then, oh, okay. And then I go on it. But then I go back. I'm like, dude, you're already like a funny kid.
Yeah.
You don't have to prove it anymore. You know, people want to laugh with you, not at you, like one of those situations.
Mm-hmm.
But it's, I don't think, and I do, there are teachers who they sometimes think that they're building relationships and they will joke on somebody so hard, but then it's like, okay, like, you know, you're joking with your friends.
Yeah.
But then when does joking become like, all right, dude, stop.
Right.
Like you're pushing it, man.
Right.
And I think that sometimes happens, and maybe it's not intended, but I think that can happen.
I did that a lot. I mean, the car business was my college education. It really taught me a lot. But I also got into the business. Like, it caters to a lot of 20-year-olds,
Mm-hmm.
early 20s, males mostly. And, you know, if they stick around with it, there's a lot of valuable things to learn. But the management knows that these guys haven't had too many laps around the sun.
Yeah.
So I came into it at a later age. I was 37 when I got into it. I came out of radio where I was the man, and then into something I was completely unfamiliar with, that 37 to 43-year-old gap where you pivot and, you know, realize, okay, I got to do something different. That was one of the interesting things that I took with me, is that when I would have somebody posture to me, like you and I even talked about this on the previous episode years ago, about having the moxie to challenge somebody or challenge a grade, right?
Yeah.
And,
that's right. I remember I was talking about, yeah.
So I remember even having like these conversations with a finance manager that was in the dealership, and I was still learning the ropes, you know, figuring it out and everything. And he was explaining a concept to me in a very condescending fashion. And I appreciated everything he was saying. I said, look, I get it, man. I said, it's got to be frustrating, you know, constantly having these conversations with new people, wondering if they're going to understand it. I said, but I assure you, I've been around the block enough times that I can see what we're doing now.
Yeah.
And we're probably not going to have to do this again. But I literally got out of my chair, put my fists on his desk and hovered over him. I said, but if you ever talk to me like that again, we're going to have problems.
Yeah.
Do I make myself understood? Yeah. And he literally
yes,
like,
sir.
Yeah. And he was probably, he's a good 15, 20 years older than me.
Well, could you have taken him?
Could I have taken him physically?
Yeah.
I would try. But I mean,
as long as the effort was there.
It would never come to blows,
Yeah.
but it's like, don't ever talk to me like that again.
You know, we had a win today. Again, teachers try to take wins every day. And this stemmed from 2 days ago. A teacher, out of passion for wanting the student to do well, was like, how long did you take on that test? Like 5 minutes? Like, you got to put in more effort than that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the teacher is mad because the teacher wants the student to do well. And then I just happened to be the next teacher. And I'm talking to the student. I'm like, dude, what was that about? I took this test and I bombed it. I'm like, well, did you try? Yeah, I really did. And I failed. And he thinks I took 5 minutes for it. I'm like, so what are you going to do? I don't know, whatever. I'm like, no. Go up and talk to him. I'm like, he's a human being. Who knows? Maybe he just stubbed his toe, right? You need to go talk to him and say, hey, I actually put an effort in that. You know? So then today I'm sitting there and the student comes up to me and goes, hey, I spoke with him.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, about what? I'm like, about what? About that grade. I'm like, oh, cool. What happened? Because I told him that I actually tried on it. I just struggled. And he said, okay, since you tried, I'll give you another shot.
Mm-hmm.
If you really tried your hardest.
Damn.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's like, so everyone here wins.
Yeah.
And I always tell my students, you can fail. Right. And you can go your hallway. MF me, worst teacher ever. He's such an idiot. Doesn't change your grade. Right. Or you go up to the teacher and say, hey, you know, I don't know. I think I got this one right. I think you might have kind of messed up on it. I'm like, well, tell me why. And they explain to me. And I tell the students, even if I know you're wrong, what's the point on a test, right?
At least you tried. You're trying to sell me on it.
Yeah. You know what? You care enough to go up to an adult, a person of authority, right? You go up to an adult and question me, knowing that I have control of your grades because you care enough to want to do well.
Right.
And that's much more important than you knowing an answer, right? So even if the answer is like horrible, I go, you know, I never actually thought about it. That's a good point. And I give them a bonus point because they cared, you know? And then there's others who are like, oh, I failed. And they put it in their book and they walk out.
It was a woman, and I think Jaworski, is that her name?
Yeah, I talked with her, yeah.
Yeah. So Cammie had her, and at first she was not a big fan. And we got to talking one day. She's like, she just doesn't like me. I don't like her. I'm not going to do very well. I said, well, tell me a little bit more. And I asked questions. I started pressing and she goes, well, if I go for extra help, I'll probably do better. That's what she said. But, I just don't like her. She doesn't like me. She's really mean. She's hard. And others. I said, Cam.
She cracks me up. Because I remember where she sat in my class.
Right. And I said, she's telling you how to close her. I said, you're literally in an experience where everything's a sale. Mm-hmm. You're either selling or you're being sold. Teacher selling to you, you could sell back, especially if you get a bad grade. You're selling them on a test to get a good grade. Obviously the facts are the facts and however the results come out. I said, but a lot of these things are subjective. You can argue them. And I said, and understanding that notion will help you so much in life. So she explained more. I said, that teacher is telling you, here's how to do better in my class. Use your lunch, use your spare period, come see me, and let's work on this together. I said, because that's where relationships are built.
Yeah.
And to Cammie's credit, she did that until Jaworski turned out to be a much better teacher. I think she's probably one of those teachers that Cammie now remembers. I don't know for a fact, I could be wrong, but I think Cammie has a much more favorable memory of Mrs. Jaworski. And it was all because we had the conversation of like, Cam, she's telling, like you said it in your parent teacher. I said, he's telling you how to win in his class.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's telling you.
It's funny. I'll tell you, my class is not even, it's not even a class about knowing knowledge. Right. This is a class of effort.
Right.
And whether you get them right or wrong, doesn't really matter. Because if you put in the effort, it'll be there. And I think the biggest difference with my class and a lot of classes are, and you might remember this, I asked teachers or asked the kids, how many of you guys get like A's and you don't even really try your hardest on tests?
Yeah.
And their hands go up. I'm like, that is wild to me that we've gotten to a point where kids don't try and they're getting A's. Right. I'm like, that's not something to be proud of on theirs, but it's not their fault. Right. And then you'll have teachers like, hey, the average grade on my test was a 90%. And they're proud. I'm like, that means your test isn't hard enough. Like what, right? Like, what are we doing? Yeah. So a lot of it is like, are you going to those lunch study sessions? Are you doing this? And it's like, you need to put in effort, because even if you put in 100% effort, I talked to this the other day, like I've got the I hate social studies board where people who don't like social studies put their name on the board. Mm-hmm. And then I could be like, okay, they don't like social studies. That's already a hurdle I need to overcome because they're already bored out of their mind. Mm-hmm. So how do I relate it to them? And then if at any point, again, they're not going to love it, but if you don't hate it as much, take your name off, right? So I can kind of make it more relatable to them. So we also have the A board on the other side of, hey, if you get an A, you get to put your name on the board. But I explained to them yesterday, I said, we have students who get an 88, 89, 90, 91, 89, and they're always in that window. And it doesn't take away from the A. The A is fantastic. I said, but some of you who now it's starting to click, because I don't give out study guides. You got to make your own. You've got to learn how to learn. I can't help you with that. Like I'll try and navigate, but you've got to figure yourself out as a learner. So they'll go out, fail, maybe a D. And they'll go from say a 65% or a 50% to a 83%. Mm-hmm. And I'll say, here's what you need to understand. You didn't get an A. And I know you're aiming for that A board, but what you just did is more impressive than a person who goes from an 89 to a 93. Yeah, they're on the A board, but you just jumped this much because of hard work and because of effort and because you're starting to get it. Mm-hmm. And I think sometimes they don't realize it because we chase grades, but they need to see there's a ladder here and I'm climbing it. Mm-hmm. But
well, that also is they're a much better candidate for hire.
Yes. Yeah,
it
absolutely.
Really does. Well, man, we've covered a lot. I think a lot more than we did the last time. A little more comfortable. Than,
it was enjoyable.
Yeah. You got to do it more often. I have an idea for a podcast addressing that, letting kids, it's okay, and I'm wondering if maybe that we need to talk offline about it as far as being maybe a co-host or something like that. But I would, I'm not sure if you're on social media or anything like that, or how do people find and follow you if you want to give that information out or anything like that.
I don't have like social media. I don't it's funny. I don't I'm not a tweeter or Twitter or an Xer or whatever it's called. Yeah. I really don't have social media. My students are always telling me I need to make a Twitter page, or I need to make what's the one thing? What are those YouTube videos?
TikTok.
They said I should definitely do TikTok. I'm just so ignorant with the social media. Like I'm over here like clicking on a phone like a monkey.
Yeah.
Like I don't get it, but
so I'm wondering about all the like opportunities you might have to consider and pursue, side hustle wise that supplements income and stuff like that, because a lot of your ideas are very good and they need to be heard. But I'm not sure how to do that within the teaching space. You know what I mean? Hal Bowman was the last one, and he's a good friend of mine that really kind of broke that mold. And I don't know if you ever heard of Teach Like a Rock Star. Did we talk about him?
I think I have that one.
Yeah. His name was Hal Bowman.
I think I have that one. I was writing a book and then I had kids and I stopped a little bit, but it was creating seals. And when you walk into my room, it'll say, be a seal. And me and some students actually came up with this a while back, but the idea, I'm like, tell me about a Navy SEAL. What does it take? Mental toughness, hard work, all of the things, a different mindset. And I tell in the class, it's be a SEAL. Like the SEAL meaning student, engaged, and actively learning. Some people think they're just going to sit in a class and get it. No, you got to be engaged. You got to actively be participating and be part of the class rather than be in the class. And a lot of what I was writing was about kind of that mental approach of overcoming whatever your obstacle is, bad home life, like struggle with dyslexia, whatever it might be, of overcoming and keep pushing through and pushing through. But yeah, maybe one day I'll finish my book.
Well, it takes hard work, man, and effort.
Yes, it does. It does. I'll remember.
Be the example.
I'll remember that when my kid pees the bed tonight. I'm up at 3 a.m. changing sheets again.
Oh, whatever.
Yeah. No, you're right though. I shouldn't complain. I should just get it done. Sit down and get done.
Yeah, write a page a day. That's all it takes.
I think I have like 5 chapters.
Yeah.
But
does it pour out of you when you get into it though?
Yes.
Yeah. Then you need to do it.
Yeah. It's yes, because
that's a sign.
Yeah, you're right.
You got a lot to say. And then, maybe there's a podcast that goes along with it at some point.
Yeah. I'd love to do something like you were saying, the whole, like not alone and the kids. Again, anything helping kids, man.
Absolutely. To tell them the things that I didn't hear. Here's the things I wish I heard. And maybe I've been thinking about a title for it that's very engaging. Cause I tried to be kind of quirky with the Mostly Middle Tennessee Business podcast, but I'm like, yeah, maybe it's this, who knows? Yeah. But, well, guys, there you go. I hope you enjoyed the episode. If you liked it, share it out, share it with a friend. Everything can be found at mmtbp.com, which is truncated version, the abbreviated version of the Mostly Middle Tennessee Business Podcast. That is a .com as well, but it's much easier to remember, mmtbp.com. Greg Svihlik. What a great conversation, buddy.
Yeah, it was fun. It was. I enjoy it. I enjoy talking about everything, politics and education, world. Like, seriously, I enjoy.
You could be a podcast host, brother. You can totally do this.
I'll try to. Where's the camera? Is this the camera?
Did they teach podcasting in the school at all, or how to do that kind of?
No, it was funny. There was a teacher I worked with. He's over at Franklin now. He's big into like podcasts and all that. And we were going to sit down and we were going to try and do something. And like from the education standpoint, debating things that are in the classroom. He ended up going to Franklin and he's killing it. Great. He's somebody, lifelong military guy. So seen things that beyond a classroom.
Oh yeah.
And he was looking for some more purpose and all that. And he ended up going to education. And I'm telling you, he's somebody who, because he's a leader and a great human being in general and loves people, education degree or not, would have been a great teacher. And he is a great teacher.
Wow.
But that's Reynolds. He's a good guy.
But I think ultimately, if you ever just have the desire to do a podcast, you should do one.
All right.
And also if they have a podcasting program, if anybody's hearing it in the educational system and you need somebody to volunteer, I'm more than happy to contribute my time and help out in any way. So if you want to pass the word up the road, let me know.
No, I will, for sure. For sure. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely, brother. Well, thank you for coming on. I appreciate it, bro.
Absolutely.